Thank you, Madam President.
Senator from Iowa.
Thank you, Senator from New York. The Defense Department has been promising Congress and the American people for a long period of time that they're working on this problem of sexual assault, and we're still looking for results, and statistics get worse. So enough is enough, I think, is what Senator Gillibrand is saying with her legislation. And so I'm proud to be a partner in this effort. It fits into an overall principle of government that I have, that greater transparency brings accountability. And I think this legislation is going to make this whole problem much more transparent, and with it accountability, and hopefully get the issue solved. I appreciate the fact that a large number of common sense reforms were included in the National Defense Authorization. These changes were long overdue. However, we're past the point of tinkering with the current system and hoping that that does the trick. We have had promises about tackling the problem of sexual assault within the current system for years and years, but the problem is still not any better, and statistics show getting worse. We don't have the luxury of time to try some new reforms of the current system and hope they have an impact. We've had those promises before. What's more, the current system appears to be part of the problem. I'd elaborate on that. We know from the recent Defense Department report, 50% of female victims stated that they did not report the crime because they believed that nothing would be done as a result of their reporting. 74% of the females, 60% of the males perceived one or more barriers to reporting sexual assault. 62% of the victims who reported a sexual assault indicated they perceived some form of professional, social, and/or administrative retaliation. We can talk about protecting the victims, and we can enact more protections as we did in the National Defense Authorization, but the fact remains that the current structure of the military justice system is having a deterrent effect on the reporting of these assaults. If sexual assault cases aren't reported, they can't be prosecuted. If sexual assault isn't prosecuted, predators will remain in the military, and that results in the perception that sexual assault is tolerated in this culture. That destroys morale, destroys lives. If an enemy tried to sow that kind of discord among our military, we wouldn't tolerate it. But we're doing it to ourselves. The men and women who have volunteered to place their lives on the line deserve better than that, and our military readiness obviously demands it. Taking prosecutions out of the hands of commanders and giving them to professional prosecutors who are dependent of the chain of command will help ensure impartial justice for the men and women of our forces. I know some senators will be nervous about the fact that the military is lobbying against this legislation. I have the greatest respect for our military leaders, but Congress has given the military leadership more than enough time to fix this current system. We can't wait any longer. We should not be intimidated by people coming to the Hill because of their stars and ribbons. They deserve our respect, but not deference to their opinion. We also hear that this measure will affect the ability of commanders to retain good order and discipline. Our legislation is in no way takes away the ability of commanders to punish troops under their command for military infractions. Commanders also can and should be held accountable for the climate under their command. But the point here is that sexual assault is a law enforcement matter, not a military one. If anyone wants official assurances that we're on the right track, we can take confidence in the fact that an advisory committee appointed by the Secretary of Defense supports these reforms. There's an organization appointed by the Secretary of Defense that goes by the acronym DACOWITS. The Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Services voted overwhelmingly in support of each and every one of these components of the Gillibrand bill. DACOWITS was created in 1951, way back then under Defense Secretary Marshall. The The committee is composed of civilian and retired military women and men who are appointed by the Defense Secretary to provide advice and recommendations on matters and policies relating to recruitment and retention, treatment, etc., and the well-being of our highly qualified professional women in the armed forces. Historically, the recommendations by DACOITS have been very instrumental in affecting changes to the laws and policies pertaining to women in the military. This isn't an outside advocacy group or a ad hoc panel. It's a long-standing advisory committee, handpicked by the Secretary of Defense, and it supports the substance of this legislation. It's easier to support incremental reform, but in fact, it is also prudent to try small reforms before making bigger changes. I understand why some senators are nervous about the total overall military justice system. It isn't something I approach lightly. However, we have waited for years for various initiatives to tackle this problem. When we're talking about something as serious and life-altering as sexual assault, we cannot afford to wait. The time has come to act decisively to change the military culture. We need a clean break from the system where sexual assault isn't reported because of perceptions that justice won't be done. Our men and women serving this country deserve nothing less, and they deserve it now. They shouldn't have to wait any longer for justice. For those reluctant to take this step, I would say if the more modest reforms proposed by others prove insufficient, and we have to come back and enact our reforms at a later time, how will you justify your vote today? Now is the time for bold action, and I would urge my colleagues to join in that effort. I yield.